Good morning and welcome to the Farm Show here on Westplex Talk 1045. I'm your host, John Combest. Hey, we got some rain this week, huh? That's a pretty big deal. We will be talking about rainfall and drought in just a little bit. We have so much to get to today. I don't know how we're possibly going to get through all of these topics, but let me lay it out for you. Right here in A block, that's what we call our first segment here on the Farm Show. We'll talk a little bit about drought. We'll talk about the governor's declaration on drought and what it actually means. We'll also talk about the governor's conference on agriculture. And going back to drought for a minute, we'll also talk about some advice from the University of Missouri Extension about how to handle herbicide applications when it comes to drought. We'll be talking today about a Missouri company who is standing up to California regulations and what it has to do with Missouri agriculture. We'll talk about vulture management, black vulture management. Last week we talked about feral hogs and how you shouldn't go out and shoot them. Well, maybe you should shoot black vultures. We'll hear a little bit about that. We might have time today to touch on New World screwworm. We'll also talk today about weed management, end of season weed management, a unique insight from a big company guy that says you might be able to skimp on a little herbicide application this fall, but you got to do it in the right context. You got to do it at the right time. He surely wouldn't use the word skimp, but I'm going to use the word skimp. And then we'll also, towards the end of the show, 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to hear from Ethan Thampy, who is a lobbyist on hemp. And it was cool to hear an industry perspective about the hemp industry. But what about a farmer perspective? Luckily, the Washington Missourian and reporter Chris Parker got it straight from the farmer's mouth. Is it profitable to grow hemp? Does it make sense to grow hemp? What about all these confusing regulations? What do they actually mean to a farmer? We'll go through Chris Parker's piece from the Washington Missourian, and I'll even add a newsy piece that happened this week in St. Louis County that will affect the hemp industry. So if you've ever thought of maybe putting a few acres into hemp and wondered if you could really make any money with those products, we'll talk about that. And I think you'll want to hear what Chris Parker had to say in his piece in the Washington Missourian. But let's start off with an event that's happening right now. That's right, it literally just kicked off a few minutes ago. From 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. today in St. Charles County, it's Pollinator Palooza. Now, I gotta admit, I had no idea what Pollinator Palooza was going to be until my radio morning co-host, boy, that was a terribly constructed sentence. Let me try that again. Before my morning radio co-host, Brad Hildebrand. Brad and I host the Brad and John Show every weekday morning from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And Brad smartened me up on Pollinator Palooza. Here's how the Missouri Department of Conservation describes it. As insect pollinators, like monarch butterflies, flit from plant to plant in search of food, they spread pollen crucial to the reproduction of their host plants. More than 75% of the Earth's flowering plants depend on pollinators. 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat exists because of pollinating insects. That's worth celebrating. The Missouri Department of Conservation will join the Weldon Spring Site Interpretive Center, Missouri Pollinator Network, St. Charles County Parks, and a host of other partners at the Pollinator Palooza Festival. Today, that's right, September 27th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. This fun and free community festival takes place at the Weldon Spring Site Interpretive Center in St. Charles and has something special for all ages. Pollinator Palooza will celebrate all pollinating creatures that help our plants thrive. The event will feature interactive ways to learn about pollinator declines and what people can do to help. The event will feature many hands-on activities such as kids' crafts, games, exhibits, native garden demonstrations, food trucks, and more. Missouri-made vendors with native plants, bird feeders and nesting boxes, local crafts, and produce will also be on hand. Visitors can purchase native plants and get helpful advice on how to grow pollinator-sustaining plants at home. Guests can also enjoy viewing and hiking the site's 150-acre restored Howell Prairie. There will be learning activities both indoors and outdoors. The Weldon Springs Site Interpretive Center is located at 7295 Highway 94. That's 7295 Highway 94, approximately 2 miles south of Highway 40. Parking will be available on site. For more information, you can call 636 300 2600. You could also go to MDC, that's Missouri Department of Conservation, .mo.gov. Pollinator Palooza 2025 sponsors include Plant Haven Farms, Ameren, Great Rivers Greenway, St. Charles Wild Ones, Missouri Community Forestry Council, and Missouri Wildflower Nursery. Pollinator Palooza also thanks the Missouri Master Naturalist Tri-Chapters, Missouri Master Gardeners, MU Extension Office, and other affiliate organizations that advocate for the protection and conservation of all pollinators. Pollinator Palooza going on right now from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Weldon Springs Site Interpretive Center in St. Charles. Well, you know what pollinating plants need? Rainfall. And thank goodness we got at least a little bit of it this week. It's still been a terrible, terrible month in terms of precipitation. And in fact, Governor Mike Kehoe has signed an executive order declaring a drought alert in Missouri until December 1st, 2025. Here's what his office said this week. Currently, the U.S. Drought Monitor indicates that all or portions of 85 Missouri counties and the city of St. Louis are experiencing moderate, severe, or extreme drought conditions. The executive order declares a drought alert in these Missouri counties and any additional county that begins experiencing moderate drought conditions. Here's the quote from Kehoe. This executive order allows our state agencies to step in and direct resources to those struggling with the consequences of drought while allowing for vigilant monitoring of conditions over the next few months. While much of our state is anticipating rainfall this week, we expect drought conditions to continue, impacting agriculture and waterway navigation. We urge Missourians to report their local conditions in order to help state, local, and federal partners best understand impacts. The release goes on to say, during drought, local condition reports are crucial to understanding impacts to provide timely and appropriate assistance. Citizens can submit information about local drought conditions at Condition Monitoring Observer Reports, CMOR. And I'll skip part of this that's not particularly relevant to us, and then continue. A variety of helpful resources are online at www.dnr.mo.gov/drought. That address is dnr.mo.gov/drought. The Missouri Department of Natural Resources is adding information on drought mitigation and assistance opportunities as it becomes available. The One Stop Drought website features a link to CMOR, current drought-related news, the current United States and Missouri drought maps, the Missouri Drought Mitigation and Response Plan, and other resources, including information on previous droughts. The executive order will expire on December 1st, 2025, unless otherwise terminated or extended. Again, you can find all that information by going to dnr.mo.gov/drought. And speaking of drought, the University of Missouri had a little bit of information for growers as well. An extension bulletin reminds growers to be careful about their residual herbicide use. Here's what they say. MU Extension weed scientist Kevin Bradley says growers should watch for herbicide carryover to cover crops that will be seeded or planted soon. Residual herbicides applied later than usual in corn or soybean this year may not have fully degraded because of dry conditions at the end of the season. This creates the potential for injury of cover crop species planted in the coming weeks, says Bradley. So, if you're planting cover crops, be careful about your residual herbicide carryover. Now, we talk about the University of Missouri. While we're talking about Columbia, let's also mention the Governor's Conference on Agriculture. We've mentioned it a couple times in the last few weeks. We finally, and I mean finally, have confirmation of a few details. You know, the good folks at the Department of Agriculture, they don't want to spill the beans on guest speakers at the very beginning. No, they want to kind of tease you a little bit and, give you a few breadcrumbs of who might be coming. But hey, we got the information this week. You can find an op ed column from the Missouri Department of Agriculture Director Chris Chinn. You can find it in the Missouri Ruralist this week. Just go to farmprogress.com. If you don't have your browser set for Missouri Ruralist, you can choose to have Missouri Ruralist pop up every time you go to farmprogress.com. Chris Chinn's column, I'll hit the high points of it here. It starts off with, "It is time to celebrate Missouri agriculture through the 51st Governor's Conference on Agriculture. The Missouri Department of Agriculture is proud to co-host the conference with Governor Mike Kehoe on November 12th and 13th at the Wyndham Executive Center in Columbia. We look forward to 2 full days of learning and relationship building." Director Chinn goes on, "This conference will be the first with Kehoe. As a first-generation farmer, the governor faces the same challenges we all do in the world of agriculture, including high input costs and dry weather. Having a cattleman serve as the top state official makes this conference even more special. His support of the agriculture industry is extremely valuable." Director Chinn goes on, "Our goal with the Governor's Conference is to show where the industry is now and where it is headed. The agenda features a critical thinking approach, exploring both the positive news of agriculture as well as the challenges." Okay, now we're getting into day one. Director Chinn writes, "The conference kicks off November 12th with a recording of U.S. Farm Report, a weekly show hosted by Missouri native Tyne Morgan. During the session, some of the industry's top economists will provide critical market analysis. The remainder of the day's agenda includes the Missouri Agriculture Awards Luncheon, a session on animal and plant pests threatening our country — I bet that's going to be New World Screwworm — and a deep dive into trade and tariffs. That'll be a controversial one. These bonus comments are not actually in Director Chinn's piece, by the way. Want to make it very clear they're just commentary from me. Anyway, Director Chinn writes, "Additionally, we will look at 2 valuable University of Missouri programs that benefit producers. The Rural and Farm Finance Policy Analysis Center, also known as RAF, tackles how policy decisions, innovations, and other events affect the ability for farmers and ranchers to make a profit. The Missouri Agriculture, Food, and Forestry Innovation Center, also known as MAFIC, staff provides free technical assistance to farmers and ranchers who are starting or scaling up a value-added business." We talked about value-added businesses just a few weeks back when it comes to a grant program. Director Chinn continues, "That evening, you don't want to miss the popular Best of Missouri Grown reception. Always a favorite of conference attendees, this reception features a special menu filled with food items raised and grown in Missouri. Missouri wineries and distilleries join the event to make this truly a Show Me State themed evening." Director Chinn continues, "Second day deep dives. Jim Wiesmeyer," by the way, he's got a nursery rhyme. If you don't know how to spell his name, he's got a nursery rhyme for you. "Jim Wiesmeyer, longtime Washington, D.C. policy analyst, begins Thursday morning as the conference breakfast speaker. He always brings a wealth of knowledge and insight into the happenings inside the nation's capital and how decisions made in D.C. impact rural America." Director Chinn continues, "The rest of the day is full of panel discussions covering economics and regulatory topics. Agriculture economists will discuss the future of net farm income with low grain prices and high input costs. And several of my fellow cabinet members will join me for a discussion about current state government projects to close out the general sessions. Director Chinn writes, the conference concludes with a luncheon featuring Tim, the dairy farmer, whose experiences on and off the farm allow him to bring out the humor of everyday rural life. During the conference, attendees should visit the trade show, which is open both days. Vendors from all segments of agriculture will be on hand to share resources, the latest technology, and discuss how they can help your bottom line. And you can register for the 51st Governor's Conference on Agriculture by visiting the Missouri Department of Agriculture website at agriculture.mo.gov. Director Chinn concludes, my team has worked hard to craft an agenda that offers a wide variety of topics within the agriculture industry. We invite all Missouri producers to join us in Columbia on November 12th and 13th. Again, that was Director Chris Chinn writing an op-ed piece. You can find it at the Missouri Ruralist website. Just go to farmprogress.com and look for Missouri Ruralist. And we only have about a minute left, so we won't get into a discussion about this year's Missouri State Fair. This week, the Department of Agriculture was able to provide a few numbers, a few metrics, if you will, around this year's Missouri State Fair. I'll just give you one spoiler. More than 329,000 people attended the 2025 Missouri State Fair in Sedalia. I think we'll wait until next week. We'll go through the rest of these numbers, the rest of these metrics, and we'll also tell you next week the dates of the 2026 State Fair. You are listening to The Farm Show. That's Farm and Ranch, Missouri, here on Westplex Talk 104.5. We'll be back right after these messages.